Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Black Swallow of Death, Eugene Bullard by channel Fatrition. Yes, another Fatrition video, another badass guy I'm guessing, because if you have a name like Black Swallow of Death, yeah, you're gonna kill a lot of people, one-man army type shit. This is the interesting thing about Fatrition stories, basically. The unheard people that are somehow was pivotal in like some major war that nobody have heard about, like, okay. It's always interesting hearing about these people, so let's watch it.
This is one of those stories that if they ever actually try to make a movie out of it, they will intentionally ruin it because the truth seems that unbelievable. Today we're talking about a professional boxer, a professional jazz musician, a World War I machine gunner decorated for valor on the battlefield, a spy, the world's first black combat pilot who also is probably the first man to take a capuchin monkey into combat as well. And just to be clear, this is not like the A-Team Avengers type group that I'm laying out before you know. This is all one guy. His name's Eugene Bullard. His friends called him Sparrow. Everybody else just called him the Black Swallow of Death. And for further clarification, Eugene is most well known for being the world's first black combat pilot, but honestly, while that is a great achievement, it's one of the shortest and least interesting parts of his life story, which we're gonna get to right after a word from our sponsor.
Yeah, well, go to original video page link, and from there support this channel. Go to joindeleteme.com / electrician. Yeah, this is it.
Wants to do it for me. So if you're like me and you wanted to give Delete Me a try, I'm gonna have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, October 9th, 1895, Eugene Bullard is born in Columbus, Georgia. He is the youngest of 7 siblings to William and Josephine Bullard. And as I'm sure you can imagine, growing up as a black child in the late 1800s, early 1900s in Georgia, aka the South, he experienced racism quite a bit at a very young age. His first exposure to this that he remembers was when he was about 5 or 6 years old. He noticed that all of the other white kids that were his friends started to treat him differently because their parents told them to. And to make everything 10 times worse, at the age of 5 or 6, not only does he have to come to grips with the fact that he's losing a bunch of his friends and that he's going to be treated differently in a negative way for the rest of his life for something that's totally outside of his control, but around this same point in time, his mother also passes away at the age of 37. And these two horrific circumstances kind of mingle together in his mind. So not only is it every time he experiences—
How fucked up that is, right? Like parents telling their children to treat somebody else differently. As a kid, for whatever reason, because like your parents didn't get along with other parents or whatever, you always see like somebody who just like was a good friend or whatever, like a good acquaintance, whatever, suddenly just stop talking to you. Like it just feels weird, right? Like back to school type of shit. Like when you look back at that, like what the fuck was even that? This weird, like whole social element there.
His racism, he has to deal with just the racism itself, but he's also constantly reminded of the fact, oh, by the way, your mom died when you were a small child. And the way this manifests to young Eugene is he basically just wants to run away. He wants to get away from racism because A, that would be awesome, and B, it's going to allow him to not have to constantly be reminded of the fact that his mother died. And where he wants to run away to is this place that his grandfather and his dad always told him about, where people weren't racist, a place across the ocean called France. Unfortunately, at this point in time, he's like 6 or 7 years old, and running away across an ocean is an impossible task for him, so he's just gonna have to stay put and deal with it for now. And this all comes to a head about a year later when he's 8 years old. His dad gets into an altercation at work. Now, William Bullard, his dad, is a single father in the South with 7 children. He is working his ass off, doing absolutely everything he can to provide for them. And the best job he's able to get at the time is working as a longshoreman, unloading cargo ships all day long. Now, he was a big guy to begin with. He's 6'3", but after unloading cargo ships for years on end, he is like 250 pounds of pure muscle on top of it. Because of this, he gets the nickname Big Ox. Now, despite the fact that he is a physically intimidating person,
yeah, not pure muscle, but yeah, I get the point, right? You can't be 6'3", 250 pounds if you don't use much of juice. 250 is like big number unless you're professionally like going to gym and shit like that. Even then, it's just like you probably need the juice. But yeah, it's like back then, like 250, kind of fat, kind of muscle, like that alone is like towering presence, right? So yeah, that would be basically that's Brock Lesnar, right? Brock Lesnar 6'3", 280 or something. Imagine that, but in like back then.
person, he still gets fucked with a lot at work, quite honestly, because they know that they can get away with it. He's a black guy. This is the South. He's not going to do shit because he's got 7 kids at home that are going to starve to death if he's not able to take care of him. So they just talk shit to his face and they treat him horribly. And Big Ox just puts up with it because it's literally all he can do if he wants to take care of his family. And this goes on for months and months. And there's this one dude at work in particular that's always fucking with him. His name's Billy Stevens. And Big Ox just ignores him. Billy Stevens talks shit. Big Ox just turns his back and walks away. And one day, Big Ox does just that. He turns his back and goes to walk away, and Billy Stevens grabs a hay baling hook and smacks him in the side of the head with it, splitting open all the skin on his skull, and Big Ox is now bleeding everywhere. He turns around, grabs him by the neck and the groin, lifts him over his head, and throws this man off a dock into a cargo ship with a massive thud at the bottom, presumably killing him. Big Ox immediately runs to the office of his boss, Mr. Bradley, who actually likes Big Ox and treats him with dignity and respect, explains what happened, and Mr. Bradley tells him, "Go home, lay low, I'm gonna take care of everything." Now, Stevens didn't die. Bradley drags him in his office and tells him, "Hey, you're not gonna tell anybody about this or you're never gonna work in this town again. You deserve that, shut the fuck up." But unfortunately, a bunch of other racist white guys that were working on the dock saw a black man attack a...
Yeah, I mean, if you know how racist people work, that was the worst thing that could have happened to them, apparently. Anything else, like, fine. Oh, how dare he? Just like, I don't know how to explain that, but it's just like, yeah, I can see that, right? I can see multiple people like, oh, this is like, that guy did this, and like just pissed off, go home still seething, right? Somehow just like somebody just like, you know, hit on their wife or some shit, that life of shit, right? They just like can't let that shit go. This is one of the worst part of like racism, like that kind of group mentality. Just pisses me off, really, man.
A white man, and that night they go out to the bar, they start drinking, and they come to the conclusion that they should go do something about it. So that night, while Big Ox is at home with his 7 kids, 2 cars pull up into the driveway, at which point, Big Ox tells his 7 kids, go hide under the bed and in the closet. He grabs a double-barrel shotgun, turns off all the lights, and points it at the door as a bunch of men are banging and screaming on the door and the windows, and he's just sitting there waiting in case they break that door down. He's gonna have to fight whoever comes through it to save his kids. Literally one of the scariest situations a dad can be put in, and while that's going on, 8-year-old Eugene Bullard is hiding underneath a bed, horrified because now he's already lost his mom and he thinks he's going to lose his dad, and he doesn't know what's going to happen to him when that happens. Luckily, all of the men banging on the door come to the...
Yeah, this is not good for kids, man, for their psychology. This is like scarring events that stay with you and basically alters your life, right? People need to really realize, like, kids growing up, any small event here and there that might feel small to you might not be small to them. It could really pivot their life, right? So basically doing permanent damage to someone, right? If it turns out to be good going forward, like somebody just persevered and did something good with it, okay, positive, but most time that's not what it happens. Some kind of a mental damage or mental scar that never leaves them, it's gonna fuck them up.
The conclusion that nobody's home, and they end up leaving. However, this is the breaking point for Eugene. At this point, at 8 years old, he decides, I'm running away from home. So that's what he does. He runs away. But Big Ox tracks him down and drags him back home. So he runs away again. Big Ox tracks him down again and brings him back home. And this goes on as an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old. He's constantly running away from home, and Big Ox is constantly tracking him down and dragging him back home. But then, as a 12-year-old, he saves up his money, gets $1.50 to buy a train ticket, runs away from home, hops on a train to Atlanta, and once he hits a big city, Big Ox isn't able to track him down. Not really having a plan on what he'd do if he ever made it this far, he doesn't know what to do next, so he's just looking for food and shelter and anybody that can point him in the general direction of the ocean and how to get on a boat to cross it. And what happens is he runs into a group of gypsies known as the Stanley tribe from Britain, and they end up...
I know this story about Eugene Bullard, but I'm thinking about Big Ox now. He just lost his one kid. Now he can't track him down. What does he do? Does he give up because he has other 7 kids to worry about? Or does he go on, but how is he going to take care of other 7 kids? He's not really living in like great area or something where people are like nice to him. I mean, clearly there are people who like doesn't like him because of his skin of his color, right? So does he take care of his 7 kids? Does he go after like Eugene Bullard? Like what does he do? It's a really fucked up situation, right?
telling him, hey, we're not from France, we're from Britain, but Britain's a lot like France. There's not as much racism as there is here in the South in America. You can hang out with us. We're going to be going back to Great Britain at some point, and we'll take you with us if you wanted to stay and hang out. So that's what he does. He lives with them for 6 months to a year, and what they were doing in America was they were taking care of horses and doing horse racing. So he learned everything about horses and ends up becoming a professional horse jockey himself. As I'm sure you can imagine, being a black jockey in the South, racism absolutely comes up and is definitely an issue for a young Eugene Bullard, at which point he finally, looks at the Stanley tribe and is like, hey, are we going back to Great Britain or not? I'm sick of all the racism. And they're like, no, we're not going back for a while. So he's like, cool, I'm going to part ways. I'm going to figure out a way across that ocean right now. So he separates from the Stanley tribe, ends up working his way up the coast. He heads towards Virginia. So he's like 14 years old, ends up making it to this port in Virginia. And then he's just like kind of wandering around like, what the fuck do I do now? Do I go up and just ask somebody if I can hitch a ride across the ocean? Like, what's my plan here? And then somebody just starts yelling at him like, hey, what are you doing? Pick up those boxes. Help me load this ship. Come over here. And then he's like, cool. So he does it and he just starts working. And that's the story of how he got a job as a longshoreman. And he does that for months. And then eventually he's like, you know what? I'm just going to stow away on a ship. So he goes, hops on a cargo ship.
What is this, Skyrim? Just chop those logs off. I'll give you money. All right. I guess shit used to work like that back in the day, right? That can't work today, right? Just do that. Like, okay, really?
No idea where that ship is going. The ship leaves port, and then like a day and a half later, it pulls into another port. And he's like, I don't think the ocean's that small. So they port again, and he asks somebody on the dock, like, hey, where are we? He's like, you're in Virginia. He's like, well, shit. So he gets off the ship, goes around the port, finds the biggest ship in the port, thinking like, oh, if it's a big ship, it's probably going all the way across the ocean, right? So he stows away on that ship. Like a day into this trip, he gets caught being a stowaway, at which point all these German sailors, some of them speak English, some of them don't. The ones that are speaking English are like, hey, we recognize you from the dock. You were the kid that's loading all the ships. I mean, we can throw you in the brig. We can keep you as a prisoner and drop you off at the first port we hit. We have to drop you off at the first port regardless because you're a stowaway. But if you'd rather, you can just like work for us and we'll pay you and then we'll drop you off when we get there. And he's like, cool, sounds great. Works his ass off. Everybody on the crew ends up loving him. And because they're all German, Eugene actually ends up learning how to speak German. So he works for the entire voyage. They end up in Scotland. They end up paying him $25 in earned wages. They give him clothes, a bunch of supplies, everything they can because they do like him. And
all right, he just randomly went to a ship. What if that ship went to like Africa or South Africa or something, right? Like the world is really big, right? Ships go everywhere. It's a very random thing to do, but I guess luck, there you go.
He ends up just walking off the dock into Scotland with basically nothing to make a new life for himself. Now, Scotland at this point in time, definitely different from the South in America. Most of the people there, not really racist at all. However, they'd also never really seen a black person. So everybody just calls him Jack Johnson, who is the world heavyweight
So I guess potential for racism there, who knows? Like, okay, we're not racist, but we haven't really seen someone like that. We'll see how it goes.
champion at the time that was a black man, probably the most famous black man in the world at this point, and everybody just associates him with Jack Johnson.
It's not because he's black, though, right?
What?
Okay.
No, well, no, I just don't think so.
Not really knowing what to do, he ends up being a street performer for a little while, and then he goes back to being a longshoreman full-time, earning a decent wage. And you gotta remember, he's like 15, 16 at this point. He's finally going through puberty, and he's being a longshoreman unloading cargo ships all.
Imagine that, I just think. Everybody treat him like he's a boxer. Hey, champ. He's like, no, I don't box. I don't box. Don't do that. It's insane.
Day long. So he just gets absolutely jacked, just like his dad. So he's working Monday through Friday on the docks, and then on the weekends, he's being a street performer. And then one day he sees this one performance where there's like, you know, the big bucket of water and you're sitting on the thing and somebody throws a ball, hits a target, and then dunks the person into the water. And he's like, oh, I'm going to try that as like the only black guy these people have ever seen. I bet I'll make a ton of money. So he gets a dunk tank set up, calls the thing Dunk the Darky, and the entire time he's sitting on like, you know, the plank or whatever it is that he's sitting on that's going to drop out when the target gets hit, he's just talking shit to everybody walking by. So he starts making a ton of money. I mean, all the street performances that he did well because he was the only black guy around, and that was a spectacle in that of itself. But now that he's sitting there talking shit to people, the first time these people have ever seen a black man, and he's talking smack to their face, and they get to pay $1 and then dunk him into water, like, he makes a ton of money. And then he ends up turning it into like this Tootsie Pop type situation, you know, like how many licks does it take? He's like, oh, I've been dunked 9 times tonight. You better try for the 10th. and maybe that'll be the one that's enough to wash the black off me, and then I'll look like the rest of you motherfuckers. This thing ends up making him so much money that just working Saturday night, he makes more money than his entire salary as a full-time longshoreman. So now he's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do this Friday, Saturday night, I'll make more money. And then
So he didn't just become a performer, he also became like a stand-up comedian, like Bill Burr at like that Philly rant or something, right? Like just shit-talking everyone, hey, do this.
I have the entire week free to go do something else. So now that he's got all this free time on his hands, he's like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? And he just thinks to himself like, oh, well, I mean, everybody already calls me Jack Johnson and assumes I'm a boxer. I bet I do pretty well as a boxer and make a ton of money doing that if I tried that as well. So he tracks down this boxing gym, goes inside.
That's
the
how it
boxing
works.
trainer has like zero interest in training him. But Eugene, being Eugene, isn't going to take
I mean, just like, hey, look at that. People already think I'm a boxer because I look like this. Train me for boxing. Like, that's not how it works.
no for an answer. So despite the fact that the boxing coach isn't going to train him, he's like, I'm just going to hang around the gym and I'm going to work here for free. And that's what he does. And he works there for free for months, just doing everything that needs to be done without being told so. And then eventually the boxing coach is like, fuck, fine. Okay, put some gloves on, come over here. And he starts training Eugene how to box. So that's what he does. He's training full-time to be a boxer Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, he's making all of his money doing the dunk tank thing. And after about 6 months, he ends up taking his first pro fight at 16 years old. During that fight, he's so fast and borderline untouchable, he ends up earning his first nickname, Sparrow. He crushes it, does great. Now he's making money as a professional boxer, and early on in his career, one of the first cards that he ends up fighting on is being headlined by another Black American boxer known as the Dixie Kid. His real name is Aaron Lister. He is the world welterweight champion, and at this point in time, he is currently living in France after leaving America for the exact same reason that Eugene Bullard did, to get away from racism and segregation. So Aaron Lister, presumably seeing a lot of himself inside the young Eugene, goes up to him after his fight and is like, hey, you should come back to me with Paris and train at my gym. To which Eugene is like, absolutely, Paris, France has been the goal my entire life since I was 8 years old. Let's go. And Eugene Bullard is now moving to France. So he gets to France, he learns French, and it's absolutely everything he ever wanted. He's a professional boxer, he's traveling all over Europe. He also picks up being a jazz musician and a street performer. He's living his dream. He's getting to travel around, do what he wanted, and people don't treat him.
Yeah, just pick up a few skill like playing jazz and shit. It's just a small time thing. Imagine somebody doing that today. How many skills people have today? Let's be honest, right? Oh, I can do a bit of computer in there and I have a degree at this. That's it. But yeah, just like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be boxing. I'm going to do jazz. Fine. I even learn how to be a fighter pilot. Why not?
Different because he's black. He actually ends up training with a bunch of other famous black boxers that are living in France for the exact same reason, including Jack Johnson, the world heavyweight champ. Unfortunately, like all dreams, you have to wake up eventually, and Eugene's wake-up call would come in August of 1914 when the Germans would invade France. At this point in time, Eugene is 18 years old, and he absolutely wants to go fight for his new adopted home. So he goes to the military recruiting office, shows up, and they're like, cool, where's your paperwork? And he's like, I literally have nothing. I left home when I was 12 years old in Georgia with nothing but $1.50 in my pocket. I don't have anything. So they basically kick him out and tell him that he can't join. So he starts asking around how he's going to be able to join and help fight and defend France. And he ends up finding out about the French Foreign Legion. If you don't know, the French Foreign Legion is...
I mean, are they trying to like make sure that there's nobody who's just like espionaging or something, like stabbing them in the back by joining France? Like some German can come over and like join French army and like stab them by being inside and do some like espionage here and there, sabotage. Is that what they're worrying about? Because if that's not the case, why do you care about the paper and things? Your country's under attack. Germans are there, right, in full force. Right now you just did all this like trench, you dug all that shit. You need people. And by the end of those things, they really needed people. They were just like sending people like it's like some resource or something. Just get to mowed down by MG42, whatever that was, from Germany. Right? Oh, just go there. It's going to be fine. And a few seconds later, they're dead. Of course they're dead. There's a machine gun in the other side and you can't do much about it. It's no man's land. There's no defense there.
It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is foreigners that fight on behalf of France. All the people that do it have a different reason for doing it. Some of them believe in what France is fighting for and they want to join that fight. Some of them are idealists. Some of them are just looking to get a new start and they go and they serve in the French Foreign Legion for a couple of years, become a French citizen and adopt a new identity. So Eugene goes and he talks to the French Foreign Legion. Unfortunately, he's not going to be allowed to sign up for a couple of more months until he turns 19 years old, which is exactly what he does on October 19th. He goes in on his 19th birthday, signs up for the French Foreign Legion and goes straight into training. training. Now, the French Foreign Legion is pretty well known and very prestigious, and their training process and their qualification process is known to be extremely tough, and a lot of people don't make it through to become legionnaires. But at the end of the day, this is Eugene Bullard we're talking about, right? He was a professional horse jockey at the age of 12. He's been doing manual labor with grown men since he was 13, and he's been a pro boxer since he was 16 years old. There's nothing that this training is going to throw at him that he hasn't voluntarily done to himself already. So Bullard obviously absolutely crushes it, graduates top of his class, becomes a legionnaire. And because he did so well in training, he gets rewarded by getting to carry the machine gun into battle. Honestly, it's just nice to know that all the other militaries across the planet do the same exact shit. Like, oh wow, you did a great job. Here's your reward. You get to carry the heavy gun. Also, as soon as we get into a firefight, everybody's going to shoot at you first. But Eugene doesn't care. He's ready to go off and fight for his new home.
Excel at the military. Great, you're first in line with the machine gun. Fuck it, here's some grenade. Do everybody proud. Let's see if you can last few minutes. Yeah, never be enthusiastic and like be first at anything in military, right? Okay, we need some guy. Oh, I'm here. I can do this. Oh, you're screwed basically.
France. He is part of the 3rd Marching Corps of the French Legionnaires, and they receive orders to go to the Western Front near the Somme River in November of 1914. So they take off marching on foot, and they reach the Western Front by early December, and according to legend, one of the first things that Eugene Bullard is told to do is to go and guard one of the flanks during a major German offensive where he needs to hold the line to keep all the other legionnaires from being overrun on the flank. Bullard's manning his machine gun, cutting down wave after wave of German, while the rest of the men in his team run back and forth, getting more and more ammo for Bullard to continue doing this. This went on for so long, and the gun got so hot that it actually boiled off all of the water in its water cooling system, and the gun overheated entirely and was no longer operable. Okay, this is not good. The Germans are still coming. There's no time to run off and
yeah, and those guns also had problem with like mechanism, right? Like reloading mechanism. Because it was so hot, it was really hard to load, like reload and things. People's hand got burnt actually. Like imagine that shit, right? Nowadays we just assume guns just work. Why not? Machine guns, yeah, you fire at them, you reload them, it's gonna be fine. It just works. Thought out in the background, it just works. And that's not how it was in World War I, right? Oh shit, magazine, everything's so hot, we have to put it in.
Get more water, and they can't hold this flank with just bolt-action rifles. They got to do something, and they need to do it fast. So Eugene, thinking quick, does the only thing that comes to mind. He climbs out of the trench, stands up in front of his machine gun, opens up the water coolant tank, and proceeds to piss into it in front of all of the Germans.
And that's what I call high-quality H2O.
And somehow, thankfully, he doesn't get hit. I don't know if that's divine intervention.
Imagine it's just like, let him run out, just like doing like, what you looking at? Every German's like, what the fuck? Look at that shit. Yeah, there you go. That's what you're dealing with.
I don't know if the Germans had also never seen a black guy, so they were just taken off guard by seeing this dude jump out of a trench and piss into a machine gun, like what? Oh my God, the French have Jack Johnson on their side. But I mean, realistically, it's probably just plot armor because he's the main character. Regardless, he successfully defends his flank, fighting continues for about a week and a half, and then it's Christmas 1914, and Eugene Bullard is there and takes part in the famous Christmas truce of 1914, where soldiers from both sides leave their trenches, meet in no man's land, and celebrate Christmas together. After that, in early 1915, Bullard and the Legion...
That is the worst thing that could happen to people in power. Right? Because people have said many times, like, wars are basically just some old guy at top fighting each other. Have nothing to do with the soldiers. They don't want to be there. And that was a perfect example of, like, both sides coming together and just playing football. Yeah, fuck it. Imagine that. Imagine when everybody heard that back there, right, in the power. It's like, wow, what's happening? It's like one of those things, like, if that happens, it, like, breaks the fourth wall or whatever, right?
Continued to go on and fight in the Battle of Champagne, where Bullard was not defending flanks, he was storming enemy trenches. And as I'm sure you can imagine, this particular type of close quarters combat really favored Bullard with all of his boxing experience. And one of the things that he said was that when he would storm into a trench, these trenches were so full that it was hard to tell after he'd really killed a man, because there literally wasn't room for that guy to fall down dead. And Bullard is fighting in this type of environment for months and never once gets seriously injured until his unit is finally pulled out, not because the battle is over, but because his unit has experienced over a 50% casualty rate. Despite that, Bullard is still relatively unharmed. So at this point, Bullard's unit is going to be disbanded, at which point all of the men that are still capable of fighting are going to be given a couple of options. You can A, just be done. You can get out of the war, you've done your part, thanks for your service. fuck off. But you're not going to get your citizenship because you haven't served the full 3 to 5 years in the French Legion, if that's what you want. So option B is that you can get sent over to North Africa where there's significantly less combat, or option C, you can get restationed with the 170th French Infantry and continue to fight in the trenches of Europe. Now, most of the men choose to be sent over to North Africa because trench warfare is absolutely terrifying, but Eugene Bullard isn't here because he wants to defend...
Not terrifying, obviously it's there, but it's like an unknown element. You don't have control. Your orders could literally be go there and die because that's all you can do. I don't even know what to say that. It's like literally no hope, right? That trench warfare can go literally anywhere. Your skill might not even matter. What is a Battle of Verdun or whatever that is, right? They literally send people who just arrive from like Britain or whatever, France, and just saying, "Grow, yeah, we are ready, we're recruits. We're gonna fight for our country. Yeah, go to the trench, mowed down by machine gun." That was their job, to keep the pressure. So the whole commander just basically thinking they were strategic. What are we doing? Oh, by the way, we are sending people to die just so it can create pressure. It's like a water valve. Like, should we increase the pressure of the water? That's how they treated human. That's how fucked up trench warfare was, or World War, right? So just based on that, like, you don't want to be in trench. Go to Africa or something at that point. But fighting there is going to be much easier.
Bunch of French colonies in North Africa. No, he's here because he wants to defend his new home, Paris, France, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He is one of the few men that volunteers to join the 170th Infantry Regiment of the French Army. So he trades in his Legionnaire's uniform for a French infantry uniform and goes right back into combat. Now, the 170th Infantry Regiment is a famous unit in the French military, and their nickname is the Swallows of Death. And after hearing about Eugene Bullard's performance in the Legionnaires and then continuing to perform at that same level, if not higher, in the 170th Infantry Regiment, it doesn't take long before he is officially given the nickname the Black Swallow of Death. From here, Bullard fights in the Battle of Verdun, one of the deadliest battles in World War II with over 1 million casualties, and unfortunately, Eugene Bullard is one of them. Shortly after Bullard and the men of the 170th took an enemy trench, the Germans would hit it with artillery fire, and a piece of that shrapnel would end up hitting Eugene Bullard in the face, cutting open the side of his face and ripping out most of his teeth on the right side. Despite that, Bullard manages to keep himself in the fight. Now, at this point, most people, at a minimum, would lay low, but not Eugene Bullard. That night, the commander of the 170th needs a volunteer to run through half a mile of machine gun fire and artillery fire to receive important intel and orders from the chain of command and bring it back to him, and Bullard volunteers to lead the group that does it. Bullard, despite his injuries, manages to get this done.
I think what's happening there is he tried to run away from racism from his home since he was a kid. Like I said in the start of the video, psychological damage with all those people banging at the door while he was hiding when his father was there with a shotgun. That's gonna get to you. It did here, right? He's trying to prove something. He know he's black and he needs to prove to the people like I'm better than most type of way. So even his teeth are missing with the shrapnel attack and everything. He's probably pain like it's fucking nobody. Like you can't even understand the level of pain. That's how much pain he must be in, right? And they didn't have like opiates and morphine shots or whatever that, maybe, but it's not gonna work that much. Right? And he's just like, by the way, I'm going to volunteer to do this when machine gun fire is happening. There's a determination there, right? And determination is probably that. Like, I need to prove something. Because of skin, my skin color, I need to prove something. And it wouldn't have been that intense if he didn't face that level of racism at his own home. So this kind of like mental damage, right? Yes, people can get scarred. Physical scars can be seen, mental scar. Even the people who have them can't realize that.
Is actually put up for the French Croix de Guerre because of it, which is the equivalent of a Bronze Star. The very next day, Bullard is hit with artillery again, fracturing 2 vertebrae in his back and blowing off a chunk of his thigh that required 90 stitches to shut. He's sent back to Paris, where for the next 8 months, he is going to have facial reconstruction surgery, he's going to have rehab, and desperately try to regain his ability to walk. While undergoing treatment, he obviously meets a bunch of other soldiers that were also wounded, one of which was a commandant in the French Air Force, and he recommends to Bullard, if you're not going to be able to go back and be a ground-pounding infantryman, maybe you could be a machine gunner in a plane. You don't need to walk and run around for that, and since your leg and walking is no longer your strong suit, you can still shoot machine guns. Why don't you go to aerial gunnery school? I can make it happen. I'm a commandant. So that's what Bullard does. He requests to go into aerial gunnery school, and he is granted that request, considering the fact that he already has a Croix de Guerre and a bunch of other French service medals, and he is going to be going to aerial gunnery school, but he's got a couple of weeks to leave where he can go out and hang out with his friends in Paris before he does that. And one of his friends was this guy by the name of Jeff Dixon. He was this rich dude that lived in Paris, and and when they were out drinking one night, he ends up betting Bullard $2,000 that he can't become the world's first black combat pilot, and Bullard accepts the bet. Now, does
$2,000 in that time, 1910 or whatever that was, like World War I time. Damn, that must, what is the equivalent to today? 20,000 or something? Like, that's a big number.
Bullard have $2,000? No, but he is the main character, and he knows he's going to make it happen either way.
I'll make that deal. How about you, Yudovich? You make that deal?
I'd make that deal.
Damn good deal.
So Bullard goes off to aerial gunnery school, and as luck would have it, on his very first day there, he runs into a pilot by the name of John Navarre, one of France's very first ace pilots ever, who's a huge boxing fan and is actually a fan of Eugene Bullard. And he ends up helping Bullard get into the pilot program, getting him through the pilot program, taking him under his wing, and teaching him everything he knows. So Bullard goes, graduates pilot school, becomes the world's first black combat pilot. And just for the record, pilot school at this point in time is absolutely terrifying. You gotta realize fighter planes in World War I are all single-seat aircrafts, okay? There's no, you get to go up in the air with a...
This might not be the first war with this kind of like a fighter pilot element, but it's like the big scale one, right? Especially French were the first one to do it. This is World War I. There have been war in the past where like, you know, planes were a thing, but this is like at that scale. So World War I was new for a lot of things.
Co-pilot that knows what they're doing, and they can talk you through it, and if something goes wrong, they can recover the controls from you. No, it's like, once you go up, it's all you, bro. That's it. Okay, most of us had to learn how to drive with a driver's ed teacher running the brakes and potentially the steering wheel, and that's just going forward, backward, left, and right. He's going forward, backward, left, right, up, down, and there's wind on what amounts to a fucking kite with an engine attached, okay? Absolutely terrifying, but he manages to...
You don't have to explain that much. Here's the thing. If car breaks down, you're on the road. If plane breaks down, you're going down to your death. This is why people don't understand. Flying car is going to be a thing. Why? Because people don't have accidents already? That's accident on the road. At best, you slide around like forward momentum is going to be a problem. If you break down like up there, engine stops, 100% sure you're going to die because you're falling down directly.
Do it. Now, what do you do when you're in the military and you graduate a tough course or do something impressive? That's right. You get some leave, you go out, and you drink with your buddies, and that's exactly what Eugene Bullard does. He goes back into Paris, tracks down Jeff, and is like, hey, I'm the world's first black combat pilot. Where's my $2,000? Jeff, man of his word, pays up. And this is my favorite part of the story because now, according to legend, they go out on the town, they get absolutely hammered, and at some point, Bullard ends up winning a capuchin monkey in a game of dice. So you wake up the next morning, you've got like $1,800 in cash left, you've got a capuchin monkey. What do? Obviously, you pay money to have a custom monkey-sized leather bomber jacket made and a set of goggles and a little headset so that your monkey can go on all your missions with you. Oh, and then you got to name him, obviously. So we named the monkey Jimmy. And then because flying around with a capuchin monkey wearing a bomber jacket and goggles isn't enough style points, we're also going to get a custom paint job on our plane of a heart with a dagger going through it that says all blood runs red across the side. Now, Jimmy and Eugene are only actually on active flight duty for like 90 days, and during that time, he claims to have shot down like 5+ planes, but the problem is how you get a confirmed kill during World War I is actually really difficult. You essentially had to shoot down an enemy plane over your territory so that you could go and actually track down the wreckage. If you shot down an enemy plane and then you shot them down over enemy territory, or if you shot them down over your territory and they managed to limp their plane into enemy territory, they couldn't confirm that that plane was downed, so it never actually counted. So while Eugene did shoot down somewhere between 5 and 7 enemy planes, none of them could officially be confirmed because the wreckage didn't make it onto friendly territory. However, 2 of them were probable, meaning that another friendly pilot witnessed him shoot down and heavily damage the enemy plane before it went into enemy territory. So after 3 months and 25 missions, Eugene goes out to the bar one night and he is wearing his appropriate uniform with all of his medals. And at this point, Eugene has done a lot for the French military and he's been appropriately awarded for it. He has the Croix de Guerre, he has the Wound Medal,
here's something coming.
The Purple Heart, and he has like, I believe 13 other medals on his chest, more than most soldiers have. Because of that, a racist officer at the bar that night goes up to Eugene and accuses him of basically stolen valor, saying that he's wearing medals that he didn't actually earn, and the altercation escalates until Eugene Bullard ends up knocking him the fuck out. Now, despite the fact that that guy totally deserved it, he is a superior officer, and Bullard did in fact strike him, and the sentence for that is 5 years of hard labor. However, considering the...
Are you fucking kidding me? So somebody can like accuse you of stolen valor falsely, obviously. he is the one who does the confrontation, regardless of what, if Eugene punched him or not. That's escalation, right? Confrontation was from the superior officer, and the superior officer was the wrongfully accused of somebody of stolen valor. That doesn't count. It's just point of blank, why did you hit him? It's like, it's very childish at that point, right? It's like, if you're in school, two kids fight, why did you punch him? Like, okay, he was the aggressor. I had to punch to defend. That doesn't matter, you're kids. You punched him and you're going to detention. That's the level of shit this is.
The circumstances and the fact that Bullard was so well decorated for battle, they decided that they were not going to sentence him to 5 years of hard labor. They were instead going to send him back to the 170th Infantry, where he would then basically be a glorified janitor for the rest of World War I. And to make things even worse, at some point during this period in time, Jimmy, his loyal Capuchin monkey, does end up dying from influenza, and the entire military base has a funeral for him. So yeah, Jimmy dies, and Eugene ends up spending
Influenza as in the pandemic that was going in World War I? Must be that, right? Influenza, it makes sense. No, wait a minute. Like, does monkey get influenza like that, or was it different strain? It could be different strain. Wait a minute, yeah. I mean, the pandemic was for humans, not monkeys, so that was different influence, I'm guessing. But yeah, they was like fucked up. Yeah, by the way, we are forgetting that there's like a proper COVID level shit going on in World War I. The people, like, if you're getting shot at, you're not thinking about pandemic at that point, right? You're not thinking about, like, let's wear masks. You're not thinking that. You're getting shot at. There you go. Right, well, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to do second part, because if this video is like too long, people don't watch it. But yeah, this was really interesting so far. Boxing and everything, his like psychological element of him. That was really interesting to learn, like how his drive, where is it coming from. I like Federation added his like childhood. That made things more clearer. But yeah. Alright, I'll see you next time.